Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, people of all kinds, welcome to the best show during the best part of the week, the end of the week.
All right, everybody ready?
Born ready.
It's Friday.
Oh, but you can't hear the song.
I can hear it.
Down on Friday. Everybody's looking forward to
Oh. I hit a whole bunch of buttons right there.
Yeah, I can tell.
Oh.
Damn,
I'm just a mess today. All right, let's get this show on the road, though. This is the EOW End of Week podcast.
Best time of the week.
Best time of the week. And today we have a special guest, Rodolpho Miller, R. Miller Loans, A.K.A. the Mortgage Guru.
Hell yeah.
That's right. A.K.A. the Mortgage Overlord.
All
Word,
of that.
word.
And this is going to be a more educational episode. Rodolpho is here to drop some knowledge to people in their early 20s on how to get invested into real estate, how to get a mortgage, whatever advice he wants to give. He also has a podcast, which is Mortgage Guru.
No, change the culture.
I'm sorry, Change the Culture. Yes.
One job.
It changed the culture. You know, we're going to start doing it more. We actually went on a little hiatus during the pandemic, lost my crew, but it's all good. We're going to get started again, coming at you with a lot of content all about mindset, legacy, and finance. Yeah.
So check for that. The link will be below.
Yeah.
But so what knowledge do you have for us today?
Basically, I'm very passionate with talking to people that are younger, especially about when you have a lot of millennials and a lot of what's the next generation after that?
Gen Z.
Gen Z. A lot of us, because of housing being so expensive, most of us are staying home longer. And my main thing is to really get to those that are staying home, are really put in your head, hey, listen, really start putting away. Instead of when you leave to rent, you might as well take advantage of living with your parents, and when you leave, buy something. And if we kind of stay focused and get away from being like hood rich and stuff like that, and putting our money into bullshit stuff like being a sneakerhead. And don't get me wrong, because I love sneakers and shit like that, but just think about really, like my podcast says, change the culture, change the trajectory of your family. Some of you, maybe your parents don't own. That's even more of a reason why, if you are staying there, to make sure you're the first generation. And even if they're the first generation, you'd be the second generation. Keep that legacy going. And the more you look into it, all families that have something, it's a crazy percentage, like 90-something%. It's like their wealth derives from real estate. Obviously the long-lasting big families, but even like regular, upper middle class people, once you realize, hey, listen, their great-grandfather owned a home, their grandfather owned a home. And for those that don't, you can actually ask them, and then you'll be like, yeah, no, my parents don't own, or my grandparents didn't own. So it's generationally, it's very important. And the main thing is just creating a budget. Hey, listen, if you could save $500, $600 a month instead of getting that brand new lease, drive a hoopty for a few years. At the end of the day, your friends will be like, they might be like, oh yeah, you have a raggedy car. 2-3 years, you own that 2-family, you'll be able to laugh at them.
And your new Lamborghini, no?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's all about what your mindset is. And if you really put your mind to saving, I was saying it earlier that a lot of people right now feel a little bit scared of the market because, you hear of values or purchase prices being very high, but interest rates are historically low. Like you might not know, but when our parents first, or around when they first were buying homes, interest rates were like at 10%. 10, and even before that, 5-6 years before that, they were at like 13-14%. And some people are like, oh, 4% is high. No, it's still historically low. So like, money is never going to be this cheap, and leverage yourself. And that's what I always tell people, listen, there's so many opportunities out there, but like, ultimately, like, what do you guys spend your money on? Like if you had an extra, because I would rather hear your guys' perspective when it comes to, hey, you're 25, 26, if you were to get 20 G's tomorrow, what do you think you would do or your peers would do? You know, and hopefully we could change that shit.
I mean, I would like to invest it.
Yeah.
You know, whether that be in stocks. I mean, I would prefer to in real estate to rent out properties and stuff like that. But I would prefer to invest it or at least just save it until an opportunity presents itself.
Yeah.
What would my peers spend that on?
Hose.
Not that.
Right.
not that.
The club.
Yeah.
You know.
What do you think?
Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, so I personally do have an interest in real estate. Like
Okay.
I'm making it my mission to purchase a property within the next 6 months.
Okay.
So it's a space that I'm interested in, and similarly to Mike,
Yeah.
if I were to have 20,000, I would absolutely use it to invest into a property. But I think the hesitation with real estate, especially at people our age, because we're in our mid-20s, right? So you've been in, well, whether you've been working or you've gone on to, you know, get your bachelor's, master's, et cetera, you feel almost as if there's a slight barrier to entry, especially if you come from a home that doesn't have generational wealth like you spoke to.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, people are kind of in the space and can teach you things along the way. So a question I'd have for you is kind of like, what advice would you have for someone who's looking to learn how to actually execute on the plan? Like someone has the passion to do it, but they're not sure where to start.
Yeah, so the main thing is it's never too early to start doing your research and never too early to reach out to somebody like myself. You know, so that's why I go on these platforms to reach out to people that are like-minded, to realize, hey, listen, you know, I'm a mortgage professional. I'm going to give you a free consultation. Don't get me wrong. Don't, you know, there is sometimes being premature. Like if you don't have a job, there's no point to talk to me. But like,
Keep
you know,
it to yourself.
Yeah, don't even hit him.
Broke
What are you
boys.
you know,
doing?
like, you know, like we could have a conversation on Zoom or just, you know, DM me. I'll text you and stuff like that. Right. But if you want a consultation face to face, as long as you're working, I always tell people, listen, credit score, we can always fix a credit score, but I can't tell you to go find a good job. You know, that's not something I could remedy. So if you have that job that's, you know, that's giving you a good salary, and say it's just a placeholder, because a lot of us in these generations, we're realizing that, you know, or at least the vast majority of us, that entrepreneurism is really the key to freedom. So a lot of us that, hey, listen, we might take a career for a few years that's going to pay us, you know, pay the bills and get us to a point B or point A. But we know that, hey, listen, we're going to get in the house and we might do some freelance stuff and to get where we want to be. But, you know, like I said, it's never too early. I would reach out to somebody like myself. I'll you know, run your credit for free, and then basically look at your finances. And even if you don't have the money yet, so say for example, you're new hire, you're making 75 grand or 70 grand. You have a girl, you know, your girl's making the same or less or whatever. So okay, listen, if you're buying in New York and you're trying to buy a primary residence, you kind of need the household income to be like around 100. Don't get me wrong, not to say you have to make 100 grand to buy any property, but if it's a single family home in Queens, Long Island, it needs to be around there. But you know, that's a basis. You know, if you make less, there's ways. You need more down payment. There's a lot of different programs. There's programs for people that have low down payments with low credit scores.
Right.
People don't even realize you could buy a house with as low as a 580 credit score. You know, meanwhile, there's apartments that won't rent to you with a 580 credit score. You know, so like you might be trying hard to get in this nice apartment in whatever, say Long Island City, Astoria, what's popping right now, and, you know, they want perfect credit. You know, they want perfect credit. They want you to make 10 times the rent, like, and they want you to put, 3 times the rent as far as down. Reality is that maybe an extra 2 months is a down payment on a house. So like you should wait it out. What I would really suggest, every single young person that looks to buy a house, only look for multifamily houses. Because reality is, listen, at your age, most of the time, of course, there's some people that have some kids young, but if you don't and you're not married, like that should be your number one thing. Like, all right, I'm gonna look for this multifamily house, and even potentially think about living in the basement. Because if you think of it with an investment mind, like, okay, great, the bank's not going to qualify you living in the basement, but they're going to say, all right, listen, I'm living on the first floor, I'm living on the smallest unit, whatever. And then once you buy the place, and if you realize you wanna live in the basement and you make it really nice, live in there for 2 years, rent it out. They're definitely paying your mortgage what you would have been paying your mortgage or would have been paying your rent, say $1,500, $2,000 a month, whatever. You put that in the bank. Act like you're paying it. Now you have $24,000 at the end of 1 year. Right. After a year and a half, you have 30 something. Now you could buy another house. So it's all about proper planning. And if you buy your first property correct, buying that second one is very easy. That's why multifamily residents are like the best thing to purchase.
Yeah, and I know that's like a strategy that you and I have talked through.
Oh yeah, live in the basement. I mean, I probably got that from him realistically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you can just live in the basement of a house, rent out the whole upstairs, live rent free.
Yeah.
And then in a couple years you'd move out, get another house or whatever.
Yeah.
Pick the mic up a little bit.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. And so,
no problem.
And I think that strategy in particular, that's something that I personally consider, especially if I'm going to purchase property within New York, because I mean, comparatively to like other Northeast markets, Philly, Connecticut, you can get more bang for your buck, and it's absolutely more realistic. However, New York is the place to be.
Yeah. But not to cut you off, like there's a guy that a big influence everybody knows, Gary Vee. One thing that Gary Vee talks to his entrepreneurs about is really, if you want to do something, you have to be able to eat shit for many years. And what that means is really live way beneath your means. If you live way beneath your means and stop, worrying about stupid shit, you could accomplish crazy, crazy things outside of your professional circumstance. So say, for example, you mentioned these other markets. I'm actually referring to that too. So just because, you might be a person that's from Queens, say, yeah, I want to get this property. What I was talking about taking a sacrifice is that, hey, listen, you might need to buy a house in East Orange and commute for the next year. Because you know what? Buying that 2-family house in East Orange is $350 instead of buying a 2-family in Queens, which is $850. Yeah. Or you might have to buy the house in Connecticut. And if you, depending on where you work, whatever, you're young, you could do it. And I wish I was, thinking like that at this age or at your age, because it's so much easier to obtain that stuff. Like I own a house in South Jersey. I got the house for $30,000. It's 2.5 hours. No, don't get me wrong. You're not gonna commute there because it's 2.5 hours away. Right. And it comes with problems. Like it took me a year and change to get it rented out. Finally, I got it rented out. And now I have some management company that's working on getting me back rent because of COVID and all this other stuff. So who knows? But reality is that I bought it knowing. Sometimes you need to know when you're buying in certain areas, like don't expect profit right away. And if you could afford to say, you know what, I could pay the taxes on this, and even when I get it up and running 6 months, a year from now, what would it pay me? Reality is that the $30,000 that I pay for the house, it could make each unit 12. So I can make $24,000 a year from the property. So I'm like, all right, it's just the same thing as me risking it on a stock, but actually even way more upside. Right. Oh, so like you're not going to get that type of return on a stock. So I said, fuck it, excuse me.
No, we curse on here.
We encourage it.
Well, if anybody knows me, I try not to. But yeah, so I mean, ultimately, thinking outside the box when you're looking to buy, understanding that, hey, listen, when you're young, you might be like, yo, I only have $5,000. What am I buying in New York? You know what? If we as people or, your group, if you are, like, for example, you and Mike are friends for many years and you guys are talking about it, reality is that real estate, there should be no feelings when it comes to real estate. It's just numbers. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you're not close to getting that investment property and say you only have $5,000, it took you 6 years to save it. Okay, then get 3 of your friends that are like-minded and look at a house, and if you go in with the numbers perspective and everybody has equal, expectations, then there's nothing wrong with partnerships. Don't get me wrong, partnerships could be a pain in the ass, but if you have the proper expectations and everybody knows, hey, listen, you're not going to cash out of this property. We're going to build this up and we're going to buy a whole bunch of distressed properties and try to rent them out. It's a 5-year plan. And if you want your money back, in 5 years, we'll buy you out.
Yeah.
You know, like, again, you have that conversation up front. Again, that's how people build little mini empires, and they can get started for as low as $5,000 if you're like collaborating. And sometimes collaboration is way better than competition. You know, so like, you know, instead of competing with your friends or your brothers and sisters, sometimes, hey, listen, let's collaborate is something that's way more powerful. And a lot of cultures do it. Unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't.
There's no I in team.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good
But there's
takeaway.
I and win. No, I'm joking. Shit. No, that's what Michael Jordan
God
used to say.
damn it! I thought that was the horn.
the post-it is right here.
Oh, okay.
So what you're saying is, if a 20-year-old got $20,000 tomorrow, don't go straight to the strip club.
Nah, don't.
Okay.
Don't
Gotcha. Don't do
And
that.
don't spend it on stupid shit. I mean, ultimately, I was at my old stomping grounds, the Coliseum Mall. Shout out to Jamaica, Queens. But it was funny. I was there. You know, not to talk about myself. I make good money, and there's certain things I hold back on, like, you know, like even owning like a $30,000-$40,000 watch, like, and I could have done it several times. I'm like, I'm holding back, and there was these kids there. There might have been, I don't know, maybe semi-famous rappers. I don't even know, but they were looking to buy Cartier watches, and I actually talked to one of them. I was like, yo, you looking to buy a Cartier? He's like, yeah, it's only 18 bands. I'm like, oh, great. You know, like, and he's looking at me. He thought I was going to try to rob him. Like, honestly, because, you know, most of the time, nobody's talking to you in Jamaica Avenue that you don't know.
Very
so,
true.
But I don't know. I have like a purpose in life to really like get to some people, like knock on the head, like, yo, 18 grand. You hear what your few of your other boys are talking about buying chains. Like, yo, why don't you put that money together and buy a house? Yeah. He's like, what? I was like, yeah. Like, you know, I was just joking. I was like, yeah, you know, same thing I just said. Like, yeah, I bought a house last year for 30 grand. And there's plenty of houses around these areas, Cleveland, stuff like that. You might have to travel. Those you aren't going to be able to move into. But if you have, especially nowadays with COVID, there's so many people that have jobs that are working remote.
Yeah.
So
that's what I
you
was
actually
thinking,
can do it.
Yeah.
You know, so this
Absolutely.
COVID actually gave people a massive opportunity for you to live in markets that you may have never lived in. And don't get me wrong, you may still never want to really live there and settle down.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't tell my worst enemy to live in the house that I own over there. But flip side, people live there, you know, and at the end of the day, you know, there's security cameras, there's security systems, you know, understand, hey, listen, I'm gonna put my best foot forward. You know, people have different, you know, I have family that, you know, you lived in public housing before and stuff like that. Sometimes you have to, you know, deal with the shit until you get to a certain level. And even more so if you know that this is an upside that you own it, it's even way bigger, you know. So I was encouraged, listen, if you're out there, you're young, 20, 25, 18, it doesn't matter. You know, reach out to a mortgage guy like myself or anybody in your local market and get a consultation. As soon as you know that you have a decent job, and it doesn't matter what defines decent, because, for example, in those markets I was talking about, a lot of parts in South Jersey, you could buy a house if you're looking at $100,000. If you make $17 to $18 an hour, you could buy a house. So, like, for anybody that's young that might be listening, if you live in these markets where houses are $100,000 or less, which there's tons of places like that in America, reach out to somebody. Don't rent. 100% don't rent. You're like, you know, because you don't even realize $4,000 could buy you the house, you know, down payment, closing costs, and everything. But yeah.
Okay. So that's
Awesome.
a lot of good knowledge. We're definitely gonna have you back on here to teach us some more stuff, help young people out.
Absolutely.
So, like we said before, check for his podcast, Change the Culture. There will be a link below.
Yeah. Follow me at R Miller Loans.
R Miller, I'll put his Instagram.
Yeah, like DM me if you have any questions. If as long as it's finance related, I'll answer you. And,
Not some bullshit.
Yeah, not some bullshit. You gotta have a job. But, you know, even if you're an entrepreneur, though, so I'm sorry, I know you guys are done, but even if you're an entrepreneur or say you're a freelance person, there is investment loans out there. They're not low down payment, but if you're buying a real cheap place and you have some money, you know, or you got some PPE money and whatever, and you're willing to buy property with it, whatever.
This is your guy right
I
here.
can help you out.
All right. So thanks for
All right.
stopping by,
Thank you,
Rodolpho.
man.
Always
Take
a
care.
pleasure.
Very insightful.